Hey YouTube friends, Tommy with AldermanFarms here. Today I was invited to participate in a discussion with the Mississippi Food Policy Council to talk about how they can help small farmers like AldermanFarms. The meeting just concluded. I'll tell you all about it coming up next. The Mississippi Food Policy Council has been working for a number of years on policy-related things to do with local food access, farm to school, farm to hospital, things like that. The council itself is made up of individuals that represent a disparate group of organizations and individuals. It's interesting that in itself. Advocacy groups, research groups, university-related groups, and even some government agencies were represented on the Food Policy Council. And today they wanted me to sort of represent the local farmer, small farmer, who has to struggle with burdens related to regulations, regulatory burdens, I suppose, that hamper our ability to get good quality, locally grown, nutrient-dense food to our community. And it was a pleasure to do that. And these folks are serious about changing the tide of obesity and lack of nutritious food availability in Mississippi. And so it was a pleasure to be there. And I had a chance to talk about what we do at AldermanFarms and why we do it. I had a chance to talk a little bit about how, for example, the requirement of a refrigerated vehicle and what that specifically has been interpreted to mean by the state currently would cost us anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 or more, and we just can't do that. They asked me to talk a little bit about poultry regulations. I couldn't do that really because we process such a small number of birds every year at AldermanFarms that we're well under the current exemption rate and would never come close to where they're proposing to raise the limit to like 20,000 birds a year or something like that. We'll never do that. It's just not our niche, you know. But I did have a chance to talk to them about, you know, you hear the term local food, and I get that and I appreciate that. I know what that means. That means that people in Mississippi should be eating food grown in Mississippi. You may be surprised to learn, I was surprised when I first learned it, 90% of the food consumed by people in Mississippi was grown somewhere else. Some of it in China. That ain't right. I mean, we live in Mississippi. This is an agricultural state. We ought to be able to feed our people, and we can, and we could more effectively and efficiently if some of these regulations that are basically, they weren't bad when they were written, but perhaps need to be revisited. And I'm happy to report that the state is interested in doing that. They're not shutting the door in our face or in the faces of others in a position similar to ours. We talked about how I was able to explain that local food is one thing. We support hyper-local food. See, the idea is, the way I look at it, is the fewer footsteps a person has to take to reach quality, nutritious food, the better. So ideally, all a person would have to do is walk out their back door. So one thing we like to do at AldermanFarms via our YouTube channel and face-to-face contact is encourage people to grow more of their own food. I talked about some of the regulations they need to look at are city to city. There's no legitimate reason why people in the city shouldn't be allowed to have 2 or 3 chickens in their backyard. You don't have to have a rooster to have eggs. I know some people think that, but you don't. And so 2 or 3 chickens in a person's backyard, they can provide eggs for their family. Talked about things like that. We talked about educating people to eat things in season. You know, if you were to ask my granddaddy or great-granddaddy for a tomato in December, he would have looked at you like a cow looking at a new gate. Because you know why? Tomatoes don't grow in December. Naturally they don't. They can be coaxed to grow, but they're not as nutritious. We talked about the fact that more, especially low-income people, need to be educated about availability at local farmers markets rather than going to the supermarkets. Because again, hate to pick on tomatoes, I love tomatoes, but the tomatoes you eat in the grocery store, especially the tomatoes you eat in the groceries that you get from the grocery store in December, you just as well be eating a photograph of a tomato, because they're just about equal in nutrition and taste, right? You can send somebody a tomato through a fax machine and get just about as much nutrition out the other end as you would get from a tomato that you buy in a grocery store in December. So it was a good meeting. I feel like I made some points that they needed to hear. They were well received. Again, these people are not the enemy, they're on our side. The state of Mississippi is not our enemy. They see a growing consumer demand for local food. So they understand it's time to do something to encourage more local farmers to get into the business of growing food. Maybe not on a large scale, but just enough to sell to their local community. And if you think about if you had 100 farmers in your community growing food, they don't have to have 1,000 acres, folks. Do you know how much food you can grow on 1 acre? You know how much food you can grow in a 24 square foot box? A bunch. If you had 100 people growing food in a 24 square foot box, I don't do math, but ain't that 2,400 square feet? It adds up. And so the state is interested in encouraging people to produce food, not just for themselves, but for others. So I was very happy about that. I was also happy that our good friend Daniel Doyle, who is the director of the Mississippi Sustainable Agriculture Network, MSAG for short, who is also a member of the board of member of the board of directors for the Mississippi Food Policy Council, was willing to allow me to interview him and give us a little statement from his perspective as a member of the Food Policy Council. So let me let you hear what Daniel had to say.
How y'all doing? My name is Daniel Doyle. I work for the Mississippi Sustainable Agricultural Network. We're a statewide network of farmers and food system advocates in Mississippi that work to develop the local food system and encourage more sustainable practices in our agriculture. Today we're here, or I'm here, as a board member of the Mississippi Food Policy Council, which meets quarterly in Jackson to talk about policy and regulation issues and how it affects our farmers, particularly those that are selling locally and doing it naturally. It brings stakeholders from across the food system throughout the state together to talk about those issues and have hopefully some consensus as far as what we can do collectively to address some of the barriers and identify some of the opportunities for small farmers and sustainable producers in Mississippi to be able to provide a more consistent quality product to our consumers throughout the state. To make our work meaningful and relevant, it's incredibly important that we're getting feedback from the farmers themselves that are day in and day out doing this and understand what the issues are, where the opportunities are more than anyone else, like myself that now spends most of our time in front of a desk and in meetings. So to be able to have Tommy Alderman take some time out of his busy schedule to come to meet with us today and talk about what they do at AldermanFarms and connect the dots between what him and Patty have found over the last few years of raising both protein and vegetable products and selling them at local markets, and helping us address what those issues are right here in Mississippi and figure out what makes sense for our small farmers like AldermanFarms to be able to make sure that they can do what they're doing in the years to come and continue to not just survive but also thrive in the local food economy here in Mississippi. I guess to continue to see the trends move in a positive direction nationally here in Mississippi, more folks caring about how their food's grown, where it's produced, and who's doing it is very encouraging. To see at a local level the number of farmers markets in Mississippi continuing to grow, the number of produce and protein vendors that are at those farmers markets continuing to grow, the number of CSAs, certified organic, certified naturally grown, grass-based, pastured, all those things, the farms that we want to see more of in Mississippi, we are seeing more of them. That doesn't mean there aren't challenges and there aren't barriers to the success of those farms, and we're hoping to address those. And I think having conversations like we had today with constituents across the food system sector that get people in line with the realities of what's happening with our farmers, as well as identifying where those opportunities to help move the needle forward a little bit is incredibly important. And being able to address those one step at a time. I think some of the most encouraging facets of the Food Policy Council meetings and today's meeting is having the opportunity to sit down together with farmers, with community organizers and nonprofit organizations who do food system work, with representatives from our land grants, Mississippi State and Elkhorn, with agency folks from Farm Service Agency to our Department of Ag and Commerce and elected officials. It really brings a good cross-section of those folks that are concerned with, care about, and want to see improvements made in our local food and farm economy together in one place. Even though we can't always agree upon what needs to be done, we're at least having that conversation collaboratively, and I think that's a huge step in the right direction, and I think we're only going to see more opportunities for collaboration and continued improvement in the state because of it.
Daniel Doyle is the hardest working man in show business. No, wait, that was James Brown. Ha! Daniel Doyle is the man who's working hardest for the cause of sustainable agriculture in the state of Mississippi. That's for certain. And we're so appreciative of Daniel and the folks at the Mississippi Sustainable Agriculture Network. They've done a ton for us at AldermanFarms. They awarded us a grant a few years ago that allowed us to do some things on the farm lots sooner than we would have been able to do it had we just been relying on our own resources. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to do two things for me. First thing is I'm going to put a link in the description to the website of the Mississippi Sustainable Agriculture Network. I want you to go click that link. Go check out everything that they're doing for small farms and sustainable agriculture minded people in Mississippi. And I think there's a contact form there. I want you to send Daniel a little note. Tell him you saw this video on AldermanFarms channel and thank him for the work that they've done for us and others like us in the state of Mississippi. Second thing I want you to do is down in the comments section, I want you to tell me what you know about efforts to help sustainable agriculture movements in your state or in your area. Do your homework if you don't know. Do a little Google search and say sustainable agriculture in and put your state name there. Let me know what you find and get involved. You can find yourself sitting in a food policy council meeting in your state and let your voice be heard. Speak up for what you're going through as a homesteader and a small farmer. Okay? You gonna do that for me? I appreciate it. And listen, see you Sunday, if not before. So I'm looking forward to it, and today I was a guest with the Daniel Doyle is the hardest. No wait, that was James Brown. Oops. That I can tell you.